We have all of our council members here except for Arch Davila. We have yourself, Josh, Star, and Dave in attendance as well. And work session discussion concerning the proposed FY 19-20 budget.
Ready to roll? Thanks, Mayor. This is our third gathering to discuss the FY20 budget. The first one we had 2 weeks ago, in which we walked through the proposed budget. The second we had last week, which was a workshop, and we discussed virtually the first half of our white pages. Today, our format is to finish out the white pages and then to go into general discussion. We'll have the same format as we had at the last council meeting. We'd like to have this meeting go from 4 and have a hard stop at 5:30 so council can go into executive session and then still be able to make the 6:30 regularly scheduled council meeting. I did add a couple handouts to each seat for the council. The first handout you're going to see is a 17 by 11 document. It is two-sided. It's going to have a picture of this one thing on one side and then a picture of this other thing on the other side. So I'll tell you what the two are, real high tech. So the one is the town center layout. It's a design for, just generally speaking, it's going to look like this. And it's going to show you just basically what, if the library expansion's completed and then some of the changes in the parking lot are handled, that's our general layout for how the complex here at City Hall will look like. If you flip that over, then you have a schematic for the existing library structure and for the proposed addition of a 70 by 70 building. And this is drawn plus or minus to scale, and it gives you some of the suggested new uses that the library will have based on that space. Obviously, as we previously discussed, those spaces can be morphed, can be changed, depending on what the library actually decides to do once they get that space. But this just gives you an idea of the plus or minus 5,100 square feet they have now, and then a proposed addition of 4,900 square feet. At our last meeting, we had talked about how will that space be laid out if we do add it. This is a general idea from the library. And then their board will be meeting hopefully next week to start fleshing out more logistics. They have a person from the State Library Association that they want to come down and look at spatial layout. But these are the dimensions for what the library has. Any questions on those two? Yes, sir.
So we're looking for design build on this, correct?
Correct.
So once the library has their meetings and they set what these people, is it going to change from a design build to they're going to ask for their layout to be built?
No, so Mayor, great question. So the same way it happened last time, the city provided in the bid package, this is what the general idea is that they're looking for. And then on the design build, the contractor will bring in their own engineers and architects to finalize what the design is going to be and then to move forward with it. So we'll just use this, as we talked previously, as our guideline document for this is what we'd like to see. And then when someone a little more professional gets a hold of that, they'll spec it out, do the walls, and lay out the infrastructure.
Awesome.
Any other questions on that one? So the other addition that you have in front of you is the consolidated statement. It's just an update based on the changes that were recommended from the last budget workshop. It's going to be the same format as what you have in your draft budget, but this will have dollars updated with our previous discussions. After today's meeting, we'll update it again, and then after our next, we'll just work towards it so that it's a working document. So when it's time for council to consider the full budget on hopefully September 19th, we will present that to you with the changes. So in any discussions today, if we're looking at an item and you want to flip back, refer back to this updated consolidated statement, which at the top left corner says 8/12 of 19 and at 12 p.m. That'll just show you the most updated. I like to put a little pin mark on the corner so I know which one's the one we're working with.
And this is estimate of June 30th. So
On
three-
the estimates.
3 quarters. We got a whole nother quarter yet to go.
Yes, sir, that's on the estimates.
Okay.
Next update, we've had some questions about having our Travis County tax rate information, having our rollback rate. We still do not have that. If you remember at the last meeting and the one before, we were informed that we should expect that by the 20th. The way I look at it, today's the 15th. Hopefully by the first part of next week, they will give us our documentation to show us what the effective tax rate is, what the rollback rate is, and then we can present that back to council and to the community at that point.
Okay.
My thought is we'll discuss it thoroughly as our first action item as soon as we have it. So if we were to schedule another meeting for next week, that would be our main topic of choice, is to make sure we're looking at our overall valuation, tax rate, and revenue stream.
And I do know on their site, they've given themselves till the 29th to have this information out. I know they're saying the 20th, but it literally could be 1 September, 30 September.
It could, and what happens is,
30
Mayor,
August, I'm sorry.
we set our dates according to the calendar that we've worked on all year long based on the information they provided us. If we don't get that information soon enough, then we may have to change our meeting dates to coincide so that we give our people sufficient time to review that and have public comments. We will not have enough public comment sessions, just to make sure that citizens can review it and look at it and have any questions answered.
Yeah, it's frustrating not to be able to give the audience information. I mean, we like it, we want it, but they want it too, so.
And we can estimate, we did some estimations last year, but the most efficient way to do it is to take directly from Travis County's handout. We're going to use that in our budget documents anyway, insert it in and go from there. Questions on that? Didn't really give you anything of value.
You said this does have some of the changes that we had already discussed.
Yes, sir.
in it. Are they marked in any way, or do we just do that by comparison?
It would be comparison. None of those were marked or highlighted. We just moved them around from those previous discussions.
Okay.
So if we go from we stopped at the last workshop last week, we'd be on page 28. The first item on 28 is a tandem item, page 28 and 29. Both come from ESD1, that being the Emergency Services District. The first item on page 28 is the Fire Marshal Interlocal Governmental Agreement. The ESD has requested an increase in the amount of funding that the city provides them annually. Currently, we pay them $18,000 annually for fire marshal services, and their request is to increase that by $20,000 up to $38,000.
From us?
Yes, sir.
Gentlemen, I have a significant problem with this proposal. There are some operational issues that we might discuss, but fundamentally, this is a request for our taxpayers to pay for the fire marshal twice. The position is funded through ESD taxes, and what we're paying them now is our taxpayers paying them for the same service. So we're paying twice. And that doesn't speak at all to whether the $20,000 either makes sense, is somehow mathematically appropriate. But if we get into discussion, I might want to visit with some operational issues, but fundamentally, I don't think we should be paying for this service. Our taxpayers should not be paying for the service 2 times.
So, and I'm reading the when was this interlocal agreement entered into?
Originally, Mayor, it was January of 2015.
Okay, so we're paying 1/3 of their salary. And then 1/3 comes from the fees. So when they come out and do an inspection, they're also charging us a fee in addition to the 1/3?
Mayor, they charge the user. So for example,
Oh, okay.
if I were building a commercial business, they would charge me X number of dollars to do that inspection, and the city just pays based on their service as well. So,
Okay.
and those numbers, Mayor, those were generated in 2015 with the idea that the 18,000 would represent 1/3 of total operations.
Right, so it's gone from 54,000 to 137.
37,522. Originally, the fire chief served as the fire marshal. Based on demand and everything else that they're going on, the fire chief hired a fire marshal and then now has a fire marshal and an assistant in that position. So that's how they're at the 137. So the fire chief doesn't handle those responsibilities any longer.
Does that interlocal agreement sunset?
No, I do not believe, but it does, originally it was a 1-year term and gave us the ability to renew annually, but it doesn't have a sunset on it.
In Jonestown, if I'm reading this correctly, they are paying 20,000, or that's an additional cost?
So Jonestown is paying 20,000 for services to the ESD for next year. So they're paying for a smorgasbord of services based on 20,000. They previously hadn't paid for those services.
I was going to ask a similar question. Does ESD1 serve anyone else besides us in Jonestown? Does Point Venture also?
Point Venture, they serve approximately 32,000 people in this region.
Okay, so does Point Venture also contribute to?
Point Venture has said they will contribute funds for next year.
But we don't know what.
I believe it's 10,000. Again, based on and that's for, again, combined services, not just for fire marshal services, but potentially for emergency management and for some code enforcement services.
So we're looking at 10 from Point Venture, 20 from Jonestown, those are both combined. They're asking us for 38, and then when we get back over here to page 29, an additional 17.5 for the emergency management. So really, they're asking us for 55.5.
If you take the current 18 and add it with the 20 and the 17.5, yes, sir.
We're not getting any additional services for that $20,000 that they want from us.
Mayor, I would say that we're not getting additional services, but we will be getting updated services. So nothing new,
Okay.
but potentially more effective services. Does that make any sense?
And higher volume.
Potentially, you could have an increase in volume, but it's really hit or miss in our area because we don't have a lot of commercial activity. So in terms of these inspections, I can tell you that the 18,000 we're paying now probably covers everything they were doing twofold, if not more, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, some of us know how many inspections are being made.
Yeah, annually, maybe 6 inspections.
How many expect?
6,
6 inspections?
6.
And they want 20,000 additional dollars?
The city manager indicated maybe more efficient. I doubt it. It will be much less efficient if we're funding part of another salary, which is entirely covered by taxes. These positions are covered by ESD taxes. And that's why it's a double dip.
Yeah.
And if my understanding is, at least on the fire marshal deal, there's 3 things that the fire marshal provides. Plan review, and that for new buildings, commercial buildings, inspection of those new buildings, and inspections of existing commercial buildings to see that they're still in accordance with the fire code and that they're safe. I'm into operational issues. All of those could be covered either by staff, existing staff, which was done in the past, or by an outside inspection service, plan review or an inspection service, which we use now because of the tremendous amount of essentially residential development, or we could send off complicated plans, big plans like a hospital or something like that, as we've done in the past, to the International Code Congress, who takes about a month, and that may be too long, to review, and they send back. In the past, we used to actually charge, and it was in the fee code, that additional cost because ICC charges. But for 4 to 6, that, and I visited with the Development Service Director, who is an architect. We could do all those reviews in-house.
It is correct, Mayor. We could do those in-house, updating some certifications. There are a lot of things that we could bring in-house. The independent service that Councilor Robbins is talking about is something we currently use to outsource some of these inspections. We could ask them to do additional inspections if the cost, the way we're currently operating, just isn't efficient any longer. And we discussed this with them 2 months ago, and they were amenable to doing additional services, obviously, because we pay for them.
Josh, is there an ability for us to maybe mitigate some of these expenses by giving them some relief on their impact fees for the new fire stations?
There would be the ability to look at fees, but not impact fees. The impact fees, where state law doesn't allow us to do reduce impact fees.
So what type of fees could we reduce?
We could do service fees, inspection fees, plan review fees, things of that nature we have the control over, but impact fees are not one of those things that we have the ability to waive, reduce, et cetera, whatever that word is. TAP inspections, TAP fees, those are all internal from our utility, so we can handle all those.
Do we know whether their operation to include another full-time and part-time employee was based on additional activity?
We know that it wasn't based on activity occurring in the city of Lago Vista. And in this service district, if you look back, the growth's been residential. It's not been commercial growth. So the hub of that area that I just explained to Councilor Davila is that activity happens in Lago. I don't think it's going to happen in the Smithwick region.
The 6 inspections that they did for us, was that included in the 18,000 that we previously paid them, or was there an additional charge for that? Or did they charge the business for it?
Mayor, the 18,000 that we paid covered those 6 inspections, and then they charged the business. For example, Vista Bella, that's something we know is happening. The city covered our portion with the 18,000, and then the ESD, sent a bill to Vista Bella for a list of inspections.
That's a triple dip.
'Cause I'm thinking fire marshal services should be on a case-by-case basis when we use their services, a fee. If they come out and do an inspection, just like they're treating a business, they're charged a fee. But I agree with Frank, for personnel that's already being paid by that 20 cents, because gotta remember, they got that overlay district approved, so they're also getting not just ESD 1, but they're getting ESD 7 money from taxpayers out here, so. We have not looked at Travis County Fire Marshal.
That's where we came from, Mayor. So we started with Travis County, and that's in 14 when the discussion started. The goal was to increase the response time. And so the discussion happened with city staff and the ESD to partner with them to increase response time. That's when this budget was developed. Then the interlocal government agreement was established in 15. So we have not, to answer your question, no, we haven't considered going back.
Right.
But as Frank mentioned, the discussion has occurred internally that if we need to bring these in-house, we could do that, or we could use ATX.
It just doesn't seem that this $20,000 that they're requesting is for this particular issue that they're bringing up. It seems like we're covering them for something else. It just doesn't feel like that they're $20,000 short in this area. And
Yeah,
I'm not
exactly.
getting that feeling.
It's not necessarily for the services they're providing.
Right.
They're asking us for $38,000 to pay a third of a salary.
Right.
Yeah. That's,
I'm neither supporting or denying this. The only thing that I would point out is that having the fire marshal here was originally at the city's request. The reason that the 18,000 was set up was because the area did not feel like it was getting appropriate response from Travis County. The response time for the fire marshal was very slow and at their discretion. And the reason that this contract was put together was in response to the fact that inspections weren't getting done, couldn't get response from Travis County, and something else needed to be done. So the initial contract, as it came up, was to help support that position with the city paying a third of the expenses for the fire marshal so that we could have appropriate and timely response to request for inspections and for the yearly inspections that have to be done with the businesses.
but when they came to the citizens of Lago Vista, and they presented this plan back, I guess in 2015.
15.
Okay? They came with that understanding that they were going to have a fire marshal, and they said they needed $18,000. So I'm trying to figure out, and that was going to cover it, so I'm trying to figure out what has changed in their system that the $18,000 is not enough money for this fire marshal. I'm not understanding that.
They added a full-time and a part-time employee.
But that should have been in their mind back when they presented this to the citizens.
Oh, it was, yeah, that wasn't in existence 5 years ago, 4 years ago. This is just something they have just recently done, like this year. And do we know, have they actually filled those positions, or is that just something that's proposed in their budget?
Yes, Mayor, they are filled. So 2 years ago, they created a full-time inspector, fire marshal, and the individual that did that worked for approximately a year and a half to establish the position as fire marshal. And then recently, they promoted the part-time assistant fire marshal to the fire marshal role. So they have a new full-time permanent fire marshal that's been working in that role for a little over 6 months now. But collectively, a total of 2 years for the position.
Yeah,
Basically, they didn't have his salary covered in that proposal.
Not in 15.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, my suggestion is that we cut the whole thing out and not double dip. Not just the 20, but the whole 38. We used to have a program called Faster, Easier, Cheaper, Better here, and I bet you if we did it internally, it would certainly be faster, easier, cheaper to the folks that are getting the building permits. I'm not sure about better, but it sure meet the first three.
Do we know what they charge a business to do an inspection?
We have a rate schedule for them, Mayor. It really just depends on the inspections. Someone like Vista Bella could have a bill around $15,000, $20,000. Someone like a gas station could have a bill of $1,000.
Okay.
They have the full fee schedule. And so as our inspections increase, then their supplemental, their tertiary funding will increase because those individual businesses will pay, they won't necessarily pay more, but there are more businesses, therefore they'll have an increased revenue stream. But it really goes on the size of the businesses.
Okay. Well, I'm just, because since it's broken down in thirds and we're paying a third and the businesses are paying a third, and I'm thinking they're doing 6. That means they were charging their businesses an average of about 3,000. Because I'm assuming our 18,000 was equivalent to their 18,000. So now they're wanting to increase ours to 38. That means the businesses would pay 38. So does that mean
If there's
they're
businesses.
now averaging over 6,000 for an inspection? Has their fee scale changed?
They have had an increase in their fees. That happened last year, but I don't think it's happened to that point. I don't think it's 300% greater.
I'm thinking if they do work for us, they should charge us the same fees they're charging the business. So if they're charging 15,000 for Vista Bella, I could see where, but if they're only charging 1,000 for the gas station, we should only have to pay 1,000 for a gas station.
Is there a time that this interlocal agreement was to cover? Or is this just on?
Yes, sir. So it didn't have a sunset, but it was an annual agreement and then renewed with the opportunity to renew annually.
Okay.
So,
One of,
go ahead.
go ahead, ma'am. One of the problems may be that they're not getting the 18,000 from their inspections and fees. If you look at what they have collected at, fiscal year 18, they only collected $10,000. And so far in 19, they've only collected 7. So they're not getting $18,000 from their inspections and fees.
So again, that would also say they don't really have the work to support a full-time and a
And a part-time.
part-time employee if they're only, if their collections have gone down 30%.
Manpower goes down 30%.
Have they gone to the county and asked them for more money?
Mayor, for my response to the question to the fire chief, no, they have not gone to the county. I'm not sure how that relationship works between the ESDs and the county.
Yeah, because they're their own taxing district, so they shouldn't be getting anything from the actual county. If that makes sense. There's Travis County and then there's ESD, 2 separate entities.
Little baby sovereign nations.
And they're getting something from ESD 7 also.
Right, the same taxing authority between ESD 1 and ESD 7.
Yeah, I find it. They've more than doubled their income, their revenues, I don't say income, revenues in 2 years. More than doubled. But yet they're short personnel. For paying for said personnel. I hate to not support our local fire department, but I don't know if this is,
It's not a good deal.
I mean, this is this is a service, this isn't protection.
Right.
And if we can contract the same services as a faster, cheaper, better, what did you say? Whatever.
Faster or cheaper, better.
Something like that. Yeah.
Internally, it's faster, probably considerably cheaper because you're not going to pay an additional fee. You're just going to pay our building inspection fees. Easier because it's internal and we won't have these, among other things, these kind of discussions
I can't do it.
This guy's running the boat.
I can't do it because it's conflict of interest, but I am a certified fire inspector. I can't do it.
He could just volunteer and do it. I mean, I don't know why he
Yeah.
didn't do that.
He didn't charge
Since he came
for
up
it.
with the idea,
There's a bunch of us volunteering to do city stuff, so
Well,
bingo.
I don't know, we'd have to talk to legal, we'd have to talk to legal on that. All right, so what's our guidance? Yes or no? I'm going no.
No,
No.
no for all or no for the increase?
I heard the one recommendation, Mayor, to say nix the whole thing. I would personally prefer to do the transition and keep the 18. That's a personal, professional request so that we can figure out what we're going to do. We do have we're going to work on bringing some health inspections in-house this year so that we can save a significant amount of money there as well. And so doing all those at one time could create a little bit of a challenge.
You just noted the increase.
If I had a vote in the world, I would vote to keep that 18 for now. But I don't have a vote, so I'll stand here with a
But
pen.
the ILA goes until at least the end of the year, right?
It goes till
So-
September 30th.
Oh, it does, it's by.
That's the date. So it's September 30th, and then we bring that back to the council at that point.
So we really don't have that much time to,
Yeah.
we can't really, well, after 30 September, are we allowed to bring the ILA back up, or is it?
Mayor, you could, but the way it's written, it's an annual fee. So in theory, you'd pay in the annual fee no matter what, even if you canceled it. You direct,
I'm good for leaving the current, the as
you
is.
direct, and I'll make it happen.
Yes, no,
I'm fine with no to
I'll leave
the increase.
18.
Okay,
I would say,
Keep what we have, but not increase.
Right.
okay, that's sufficient, ma'am. We're going to go to page 29. This has a similar type of historical creation. So a couple years ago, the city looked at, sorry,
Sandra, sorry to bother you. I managed to get here without a writing utensil. Do you mind? I'm sorry.
I did see the timeout.
Well, it
Was with you.
usually comes with my notepad.
I probably stole
have a
it.
pad and a pencil here, but it's not on my desk.
Look at that.
Here you go.
Councilor Bartholow is throwing one at you
Oh,
now.
can't do that. I've already made Sandra go get me one.
I'm going to tell her that he threw his away on purpose. It's on video.
That would be disrespectful. Thank you. Oh, two.
Just in case one doesn't work.
In case I break the lead. All right, thank you.
On an ink pen.
Time in.
So ESD emergency management request. A couple years ago, the city was handling our emergency services operations in-house. We were handling it through our police department. We had our captain and our lieutenant have sufficient training so that they could handle emergency services requests. Shortly after this council came on board, we had a discussion about bringing those to the ESD with Chief Norman. He said, hey, we have a lot of the certifications. Our guys have it. We could offer that and work in tandem with your team. We thought this is great. We brought it to the council, said, let's do this. Chief Norman said that he would be the emergency services director or the coordinator for this region. And our recommendation, mine and Chief Smith's, was this guy's fully capable. Let's take it. The request has come back now from ESD is that, again, the services have grown to a point whereas the chief can't handle all of these other smaller tasks. The chief is a chief. He brought on a emergency management coordinator. That person has started in the position, been in the position now for, we're in August, so maybe 8 months or so. The request has come to the city to pay $17,500 annually to pay for that person, a portion of that person, and a portion of the Emergency Operations Center, which is now located in the Casey Building. So $17,500 would cover an employee and potential Emergency Operations Center. The value of Emergency Operations Center is anytime an emergency occurs of that nature, we all go to that place. It has little red phones that we call for help, and we congregate there instead of congregating in here that's not set up as an EOC. Previously, we were using the operations room at the police department.
Do he sound you out on any of these personnel moves before making them?
Mayor, not either one of these two. And I have a dialogue with Chief Norman as well as this staff, and we interact all the time, but on these, it wasn't brought to us. We were just introduced to the new Emergency Services Coordinator.
So Councilman Collins, on this one's a little bit different.
Yeah.
I mean,
We had.
the way it's kind of written, you think it's on an additional, it's a double dip as well, because it mentions a position. But this is actually a service that if we don't contract, we don't get. The fire protection and some of the other services, that comes with what the citizens pay in their taxes. This is not a service that is covered by the citizens' taxes,
This is covered
by us paying a fee. And even though it listed as a position, pay for the emergency service manager position, we're actually paying a fee for their service. We're not really paying their salary. It's a little bit different.
But the position is fully funded through taxes. And the position is an emergency service coordinator. So it's a
But-
double dip.
I'm thinking if we don't, that position would go away.
And then, and Mayor, you, and we probably can't do this today, but there's a ton of operational issues then that we might discuss. If we brought it back, if they decided not to be the regional, this is an interesting point. They would decide not to be the regional emergency service coordinator, but they have the EOC and they have the position, but they wouldn't do the job? Oh, okay. We can do it. I think, again, it could be done internally. I don't think that's right because I think regional emergency response is certainly the right way to do it. But I would hope that they would decide to do their job even though we wouldn't give them some additional money.
Well, yes and no. In theory, we fall under Travis County Emergency Operations. The county is what is really required to do that job. However, we can choose to bring in somebody else. The way the ESD1 has gotten started in it is because Jonestown, Point Venture, and now Lago has chosen to use ESD1 as our EOC instead of Travis County. So if we choose not to, then they've either got, if they want to keep that position, they've got to get money from somebody else. But we would revert back to Travis County.
But that's my point. I believe this is a fully funded ESD position. It is not conditioned on others paying. Is that correct?
Mayor, and from what my knowledge is, yes, it is funded through their operations, but we've not been told either way, if we don't fund it, it'll go away, or if we do fund it, it'll continue. The only conversation we had originally was when we chose to use ESD for emergency management services, we asked the question, is there a funding mechanism that comes from the city in response to this? And at the time, which was basically December of 17, the answer was no. But again, over the course of time, the chiefs can only do so much in terms of their operation. So that's where, back to Councilor Collins, I think they saw the need, and then the need was not only for the person, but for the EOC as well.
Yeah, the reason I think that's funded for the ESD taxes, I think most of us have been with sat down with the chief and seen his budgets and stuff, and this is not a sort of fee-based budget or the position. It's funded. That's the way my understanding.
That is
in my
correct.
conversations with the chief.
It is listed under the existing personnel. It doesn't have a separate
Right.
earmarking fund kind of a. The point being, this would be an easy one if they didn't have the funding to say that position's squashed. You're not going to say we're taking off a driver because we're not getting the funding over here for something. I think that's kind of the point.
Right. And so we're an incorporated city within Travis County. Travis County would be our EOC. We would have a representative, which would default to the mayor.
Quite capable.
Unless we appointed somebody else.
No, that, I understand that. That's
But- and
operational
just so
issues,
y'all
yeah.
know, I try to attend every emergency management conference that I can, just in case I do ever have to become the,
So how do I put this correctly? He did not see the need for this a year ago.
nobody had asked you. Oh, you're talking about the money or the position?
Money.
Yeah, at the time. And that, like I said, I think that was December of 17 is when we made that. It was either December of 17 or January of 18 when we made that switch. And no,
So is this 17.5, again, shortfalls, and then putting that EOC center in Casey building?
it includes both of those items. It includes the employee, the position, and the EOC in the Casey building. Remember, the Casey building operations are both an EOC and administrative offices.
Right.
So there's multifunction there. It's not just the whole space, but it is part of that space.
And what are we getting again?
An emergency management coordinator and an emergency operations center. So we've got a person that if an emergency occurs, that person becomes our main point of contact to lay out, to engage our emergency operations plan.
And the only one we recently had was the flood.
We had the flood. And we didn't have a full-time position in when that occurred. They hadn't funded that position yet. Nor did they have the EOC.
But, so for instance, if a tornado came through and wiped out Lago Vista and Point Venture and Jonestown, the ESD one would handle Jonestown and Point Venture emergency operations, but not Lago. So if there were shelters set up, we'd have to have two separate facilities, if we didn't agree to contract their services.
Well, if the salary's being paid, is there a way to allot this to the operations center, the cost of the building and the electricity and such?
Mayor, I can say that if there's any funding that goes to ESD one, they will use it to provide service. I would say they just throw it into a revenue line item that says revenues, expenditures, and it pays for whatever they deem it needs to be paid for.
Is there, what would next year be?
We do not have any
Yeah.
kind of comments back.
There's no pre-planning on their part for any future support.
For this item, Mayor, the request is that this number for ESD or for the emergency management position and operations would be based on per capita. So annually, they want to lay this out so that it's a per capita service. And so that would go back towards Point Venture, Jonestown, and Lago. The only challenge for us is putting those numbers only on the residents in those incorporated areas is just it's just a challenge, because then there's no additional dollars coming from the unincorporated. And if there's a 32,000 population district and we represent 8, 2, and 1, then there's 11, there's still 21,000 people that aren't paying a second. That's the only challenge. I mean, for the operations center, we know there's value there. We've seen it this year, even with a smaller incident. An EOC is something that if we were to build a new facility or something, we'd like to have a space. But you use it on demand. During the rest of the year, hopefully when nothing happens, it's a training room or a lunchroom.
So why do you need a full-time emergency manager?
Only because you don't know when the emergency is going to happen, and you got to keep them trained and have them sitting there to.
He's got to be ready to go when,
That's right. You know, you want the last two meetings, actually, the last two council meetings, the emergency management coordinator has been here in our meetings. So he's been the gentleman in the back right in the ESD uniform. Great guy.
So that's the only thing he's doing? He's not doing other fireman duties when he's not
Yeah, no.
handling an emergency?
The way they've laid it out in our discussions is he is not handling responses to normal fire calls. He has been working with our team on FEMA reimbursements for the flood event.
Okay.
And theoretically, he could be working with other people as well, potentially, but he's an administrative position.
he would be the person that we would turn to if we had an emergency. This is, I think, when we were talking about the expansion of the municipal complex, we talked about a trauma center, is that correct? And so this person would be the one that would be in charge of that trauma center and
Well-
and whatever.
It's what we talked about, but it was still going to be an emergency operations center. Trauma would just be something that they would add it potentially as a part, but it'd still be an EOC.
Right.
But yes, our communications would go through this person. We wouldn't call Chief Norman, we'd go straight to this person.
Right.
As soon as we engage it, as soon as the mayor says we have an emergency, all of our contacts go back through that person. This is where theoretically we would include our 311 system as well, as we're using that EOC. And that's part of the dialogue we want to be able to utilize the EOC with a 311 system. So we're disseminating information collectively using that facility that has that phone line.
I want to ask a question. I was at a conference and we were talking about Firewise. And when I spoke about the amount of ash juniper and litter trash on the floor as being a starter, and the guy kind of indicated that ash juniper would smother a fire. And I didn't go any further with it, but I'm just, how fast does it burn here?
My experience has been that junipers burns very hot, very fast.
Once it gets going.
If it's green, it may not burn as fast, but the problem with junipers is it's got a lot of
A lot of
oils.
oil, yeah.
And it's hard to put out.
Well, we do have that thread.
Yeah.
And
that'd be fine.
what the emergency operations plan, the EOP, this person will be responsible for regionally bringing people together and updating that plan and keeping the contacts ready. Again, for when the action happens, the system's ready to engage the mechanism and get to work. That's the whole point. So hopefully you never have to use them. We like that plan.
I like this request. I just wish it was worded a little bit different. You know, operations center and emergency operations services, not necessarily
Position, right.
emergency services manager position. But again, I've gone to lots of conferences on this, and wow, the work is intense. There's a lot that goes into emergency operations, and
Would he have a
Yeah,
line
we're
item, I
dedicated.
don't know his budget, but does he have a line item for personnel and a line item for operations? That this would be, he would count that as income towards his operations and not personnel?
Mayor, I do not know how the ESD budget's listed out. As Counselor Robbins said, I think you may have seen the budget. I've not looked at their budget. I've not requested to look at their budget, and I would prefer not to look at their budget. You look at it and figure it out, that's great. I don't want to look at it.
Well, I'll go with the mayor's thoughts on this, I think.
Yep. This one I would support.
what's
Yeah.
on the big end? So for Frank said no.
I support it. I mean, if we ever have an emergency,
We'll be glad we had it.
Well, let me,
Well,
I'm gonna go a little further into operational and the mayor's gonna jump in. Because I've actually been on the ground when we've had fires here. Now, it wasn't a fire throughout the whole region, it was just a fire in Lago Vista. You don't use the Emergency Operations Center to fight that 10, 15, 50 acre fire. It's the command center that the fire department sets up at the fire.
Right.
So
This
the
is-
Emergency Operations Center regionally probably would never go into operation unless we had a terrible conflagration, which is unlikely.
Well, I have,
Or-
I have a nephew who lives in Paradise, California. Gone. And if we have something that big, I could sure see an operations center emergency.
Well, then I can't, I'm gonna,
Well,
Well,
I'm
it was,
just saying
it was
that-
actually activated in October. The Emergency Operations Center was activated this past.
no,
October.
that's what I'm getting at, because that was a Lake Travis issue. That was clearly regional.
But a tornado could be.
Tornado
A
would-
regional.
Yeah.
I mean, reality, would we use it maybe once every 5 years, 3 to 5 years, I guess? But, you know, you got global warming, so the sky's gonna fall anytime now.
It's
You never
insurance.
know with emergency.
It is insurance. It's like a utility service line warranty program.
That's
It's
right.
good to have it when you need it.
And, sir, I have forgot to do something. This is a public meeting, and I have not, on the previous page, I didn't ask for input. But I'll need to go ahead and ask for input from the audience. If y'all have any thoughts on these two.
I agree with Frank. I think it's multiple billing for the same service, especially on the first item. This one, I mean,
Yeah.
I worked in the insurance industry, so it's always
Well, and if we,
and this lady does too, so
well, and we,
emergency planning and being mobilized when it occurs is an issue. I understand.
and if
There's
we,
a lot of training involved in keeping up with the newest tactics and strategies that are out there. You don't want to be caught involved on that.
well, and the reason I supported this myself is because if we don't use this person, then we've got to come up with another representative. And again, it either falls on me or we appoint a police officer like we did prior to having Chief Norman do it. If we appoint a police officer or somebody on staff, now we got to pay for their training. And what does that cost us? You know, for,
But you know, the last time we had a flood, you know, I was directly involved in trying to find out and try to help people. And it was a nightmare not having one centralized person. And it was also a nightmare in trying to tell people who to go to. You know, if we have this system in place and we have a center right up here in the Casey building, you know, it's a lot easier than us trying to figure out what to do in an emergency situation
Mayor, we didn't have the EOC,
at that time.
but we had the director. We had that in place. We'd had it in place for a little over a year.
Yeah, but he wasn't really assuming, Donnie, you know, I
when-
mean, it wasn't effective and it wasn't efficient in how it was run then. If this person is going to be in that position, he should know everything about it.
and I have a feeling the reason he brought this person on is because of the feedback from
Yeah.
the way the operations went in October. He was like, okay,
Yeah.
I need a dedicated person. But
one of the interesting things about October, that if I'm understanding it, and help me with this, is that we really had trouble communicating with folks that wanted to help,
Correct.
which is,
And also communicating on where to go to get the help. There was, you know, so some people were going to Donnie, some people were going to the chief, and, you know, everyone was trying to scrounge around. I'm assuming this person is the person that is going to coordinate everything,
It's where everybody would go to.
and everybody would go to. And
Yeah,
then it would go to different
and
places.
it wasn't so much like shelters or anything. We didn't have anybody that wanted a shelter, but people kept asking about Red Cross and things like this, and
with that incident, we had more help than people that wanted help. That's really was part of our challenge, and we dealt with it right here.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's probably a lesson learned, something that you have to go through after you have an emergency. You do these after action reports, you'll learn lessons, you change your plan to deal with this wonderful place where folks want to help too much.
I was just going to say, Mayor, you've got, if you look at the votes, there's four, at least four for it. I just was clarifying if it was the 17.5 or if there's any kind of asterisk with that. Is it greater, less than, or equal to a request? I counted 4 in the middle and said, you're good.
I'm okay with the request myself,
Yeah.
Okay.
17.5.
just because I know what's involved.
Okay, we will add that one. It has not been added to the budget. Okay, next one, page 30. This is a new city signage. This is presented to the council because this has been in discussion for a number of years, and by a number, I'm going to say at least half of a decade, if not greater, in terms of the city has signage. It's older signage, and this is directional signage and just general city signage. So with the discussion coming up so often in the same topic, the question is, does the city want to start a process this year that involves community input about changing, improving, eliminating a city signage program?
Does this include wayfinding?
This would include every type of sign, Mayor. And with our new scenic city designation, it restricts us in some shape, form, or fashion. So we were waiting until after that designation to present this out community-wide because we were in the middle of that application. So it would include all signs in the city, Mayor.
All signs.
So this $75,000 wouldn't actually take place until after all that community input, and so it could be towards the end of the year before.
Mayor, this is a complete wag on 75,000. It's just if we were able to have 6 to 10 community input sessions, and then they decided, let's do some project.
Right.
This would be a portion of what that project is. If we decide we're going to do a welcome sign coming in on 1431 from Jonestown, then it could be 250,000, but those would all be project specific. So this is a wag to say, put a portion aside to host meetings, gather information, and then maybe do smaller projects, or, as the mayor said, a group of wayfinding signs or something.
Got it.
No quality estimating has occurred on this item. It's pulling a number out, thinking about,
Just putting a mark in
Is
in the
the
budget.
general fund the only revenue source that can be used on signage?
no.
I'm thinking hotel occupancy.
I don't know where you're going to put them towards. You could
That sign is brought in tourism.
Hit-
Where?
which sign? Is
The
that
one- this
any
one.
sign? Yeah.
Welcome to Lago.
There's something sign.
Golf course, spend your money this way.
Right, I agree. That is definitely utility fund. It's,
Utility. Oh, that's hot for
it is, it's, like I said, the dollar sign is one part, Mayor, and we could set something aside if council gave direction, and then we would look at it with you. We would definitely not go forward with it expending anything on any kind of sign program until we start having community
Public should
meetings.
Definitely be involved.
That would be the whole thing. We want to start the public input session, but we also want to have the idea that eventually something's going to be funded.
Yeah.
And I would just like to say, if we're going to start the program, we
Need to
put the carrot there that says, at the end, you're going to get something for your meeting, not just some donuts from
And yes, we hear
Lago
that all the
Donut.
time. We could definitely use
Yes.
better signs.
Signage is
We've tried
an issue.
in the past, and even the attempts in the past have never got it right or good. I don't know.
We could do something unique to Lago.
Comments?
And
The logo
just-
on it.
Just for clarity on the scenic city side of things, they're not opposed to signage as such. What they wanted to see, all the cities that applied for scenic city designation, is that they banned billboards. That was the main issue.
We've already got that covered.
Well, I know. So-
75,000 for 2 billboards, Mayor, so there goes that one. You can kill that number.
Yeah. But other kinds of signage, in particular, wayfinding signage is not a problem.
All right.
Just one cautionary note is that we don't set aside $75,000 and decide how we're going to spend it. If we don't need it, or if a plan doesn't come together, it's not going to be spent, right?
Correct. And Mayor, my thought again is, if we have, let's say we have the first 3 meetings and all of a sudden we come up with the community wants to change the signs at dawn, then we go back, we look at a specific sign, we lay out a project, bring that back to council as a project. So it'd be earmarked as that city signage program funding that would be earmarked specific.
So Turnback Canyon or something like that. I just don't feel like, I don't see a whole lot of need for guidance signs yet in our community. I don't think we have 10 places that we're sending people to, short of the ones that exist that could be made to look a little bit better, a little more obvious, but not to the tune of $75,000.
Yeah, and I think that's I think that's one of those things. It would be nice that potentially in the future, if this was an item in a specific department, not just non-departmental administration, so that if Parks and Rec wanted to focus on this program, they would have that line item. But same thing, if it's not expended, it wouldn't cross over to some other.
I just
by
feel like we're
vote.
not going to be anywhere on that until next year's budget, probably by the time we have a park and a trail and some other things.
I definitely wouldn't disagree. I think that the only way we're going to get there is by third quarter of the year, if we get to that point. And that's how, it also depends on how effectively we can get people to come in to start these meetings.
Well, and we also this will probably be part of the community input. What goes on these signs? Is it strictly city, or are we gonna try and point out private, like Green Deer Golf Course?
This is one of the things the chamber asked us about on the wayfinding business signs.
Are we gonna do wayfinding for businesses? And if so, are we gonna ask them for reimbursement on the wayfinding signs, which I think is currently the way our wayfinding sign is written?
Mayor, when it developed originally, it did have businesses could purchase the signs. But that's also something community-wide. Do we want to increase wayfinding signage, or do we want to limit it to you can only find 4 businesses in Lago?
Yeah.
Well, this would just be a $75,000 set aside though, right? So
It would be set aside
So if we don't
earmarked
spend it,
specifically.
then we don't spend it.
specifically for signage.
I think that's a large set aside. We're kind of getting close on the budget with some stuff here, like the fire department. I feel like it's almost a slap in their face because it's twice as much as their 2 items put together almost, so.
You know, this is our situation, like Travis County, they created that situation. We didn't.
I get that, but I'm just saying, and trying to be responsible with taxpayer money, if you name me 5 places you want to put on wayfinder signs right now, and I would think this was a good idea, but we're working toward having those places, and I think it's going to take us another budget year before we have a need. That's just my feeling.
Well, I don't think we have any wayfinders that says where our airport is. I don't think we
There
have.
are airport signs.
I
Yeah,
couldn't find it.
yeah, there's a sign up there, but the issue, some of us have looked at this for 10, 15 years
It's
here.
been a while.
And so there actually is a wayfinding sign to the airport, but does anybody notice? That's some of the stuff you look into.
Right.
Where is it? Because I've never seen it.
At the
Yeah.
airport.
At the
It's
airport.
a text stop
So you
sign.
want to find
It's
the
a
airport.
text
you wanna
stop sign.
Right across from the high school, or the old high school.
Yeah.
The way
Right
the
there on
town is,
Parquet
the
by
way the
the-
town is laid out.
By the village shopping center, it points up the hill.
I think we
I've
could
never
use
seen
them. I never.
And if there's
By
another
the time
number,
down-
Mayor, it could be another number. Again, as the thing is to have us something that puts it as a tangible item so that we know we're moving towards it. And then as projects come up, they're probably going to come back to the council anyway, individual projects. So
Right.
any way you lay it out, we're good with it. We know that it's something we need to address. Even if the end game is the community says, no, tear every sign down. Great.
If I was gonna have a say in that, you're talking about $75,000. I'd love to see us, we're gonna put a sign in the right of way. If we were mowing the right of ways like we used to on a monthly basis, then keeps the fire hazard down, the streets intact, and we could use half of that money to pay someone an annual salary to keep our city better for the people that are, the volunteers that are picking up the trash. And I drove around yesterday and found a lot of that stuff still unmowed. And to have this money setting aside for something that is above and beyond the basic necessities seems irresponsible.
I've asked people in town if it was easy to find their way to wherever they're going, they said no.
Where are they going?
Town hall, the golf course.
I think if you're looking at signs, currently, the way it would look, it'd be the post office, the airport, the schools, the golf course, the Barcade Park, City Hall, emergency services, fire department, those sort of things.
Municipal complex.
Yeah, that you would, pickleball courts this way, and you would just lay it out. I mean, there's no harm in having $75,000 sitting
what I-
there.
That's
I
what I
mean, it
said.
could always.
We're not even gonna cut it out.
We're not even,
It's
This
there.
is just
We'll
a set
use it.
aside.
With your smartphone and Waze, and I think it's completely unnecessary right now.
Well, that's why I was asking about funding source, because if you have a funding source that's, you can only use in specific areas, then you don't take it out of the general fund that could go for things like operational, like mowing.
Well, it'd be nice to be able to look at the city's history and see where the money came from. When the wayfinding signs that do exist, where did that money come from? I'd be willing to bet it came out of the general fund.
And we'll look at funding, Mayor. We'll clarify that before you get to the September 19th consideration of final. We'll clarify it by next week. So generally, I've got a yes. I just need to know dollar figure. What's the,
75,000.
That'd be fine.
That's fine.
fine.
there's 4.
Five.
Sorry, Mayor. 5 doesn't matter. Once I got 4, we're good to go. Mayor, the next one is another type of community program. This is Art in Public Spaces. It's on page 31. It has a budget request item of $12,500. This is a continuation of the program that's existed previously without that formal title. If you recall, this year, council set aside $5,000 to purchase a piece of art and to provide for the foundation of that piece of art. The windmill at the intersection of Dawn was the previous one before that, and then, or the wind spiral, and then the windmill at Paseo de Vaca and Loman was the art before that. So this would just be a continuation, and it would allow us to purchase potentially 2 or 3 additional sculptures to put with the other sculpture we have to create that sculpture garden.
It'd be one location.
To begin with, yes. So the plan now is on that map that you've got of this town center. The one item is going to be located here around that pavilion, that stage area, and you would have 2 sculptures on one side, 2 sculptures on the other, close to where the walk paths are, so that you could walk by and view that area. And it's a local art display, so if you recall, the last item was a local Lago artist who actually has a lot of items in a library posted. We would do the same thing. We would encourage people to be local regional artists and say, if you have something, we would like to consider it and review it. Previously, this has been handled through KLVB.
And because this is art, this is something that can be,
It can, Mayor. So the actual purchase of the art can be included in the hot tax. The foundation for presenting the art cannot. And so in the description here, I've put it can be funded through hotel tax and or general fund. So in theory, if you had $10,000 on the art side, you'd have $2,500 on the general fund side.
can I hang a wayfinding sign off the art?
You could.
That's what I was thinking.
And once you get there, it says art is here.
Library here, City Hall there.
You just get a bunch of statues of winged little,
Electros.
Tie that into it.
so, yeah, well, I'm good with this one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My question is, the signage and this one, it says will be funded or could be funded can be, were they included in our budget?
Neither page
Neither one?
30 or 31 have been included in your
Okay.
budget.
The new statement that you gave us today,
Yes, sir.
did it include the adjustments from the ones last week
Yes, sir.
that we said to add in?
Yes, sir. Okay, going on to the next. Page 32, Mayor, this is OpenGov. This is the presentation that we had. We talked about this briefly in our last workshop. OpenGov is the online transparency financial accountability program where the individual gave us a presentation to council, and they have their professional one-time setup fee, $16,470, annual software, $27,583. This is a twofold request. The first request is if council is interested in us updating an online portal through more than just providing our financial statements and have an interactive portal. If you are interested, that's basically the first vote. The second part would be, based on our previous discussion, we would go back to OpenGov, ClearGov, and any other third-party provider and bring back quotes to council. We have this one from OpenGov. We already have an estimate from ClearGov. We've talked to another provider, and we're going to get an estimate there. So we bring different options to the council.
Was this option cheaper than the ClearGov?
No. This option turns out for the first year being $29,936. ClearGov, their setup fee is $1,800 and their annual fee is $5,560.
So roughly a fifth of the.
Roughly less.
Will this help you and your senior staff more efficient operation in the city?
I don't think it's going to make it more efficient for the staff for operating, but I'm pretty confident it'll make it more efficient for citizens to view our expenditures and revenues and to be able to have an interactive module. That's the difference. I think it's going to allow citizens to find information faster instead of just looking at the basics of a monthly financial statement, and to compartmentalize expenditures better than just looking at a
And
consolidated.
interactive would be what?
So they would, let's say, for example, I want to go in there and see what we're doing in streets. I could go click the street budget, and then let's say I want to increase it by 10%. I type in the 10%, it shows an increase there, and then it subtracts that from some other expenditure within the same fund, so within the general fund. So if I wanted to add 6 police officers, I get to add that. It provides a tool and a mechanism for someone to trial and error, see cost and effect.
Citizens can do that.
Yes.
And same thing for council too. There's a benefit there to
Totally.
move it around.
Well, and it also basically provides a interactive look at the city's checkbook. I mean, it by department, by line item, everything, anything that's brought in or paid out to every vendor, every employee, well, not employee, but anybody we write a check to, it would show the citizens, how much we're paying,
Okay.
and so it provides transparency into our finances. So, they're looking at a project and they want to know how much the city's truly spent on this project at any given time and who we're paying. All they got to do is go and click on it and it shows them. Boom.
I feel like this is another one of those cost versus benefit things that if someone were to come and ask you any of those questions right now, it'd be readily available. And we've got 3 citizens that have shown up to a budget session here, and maybe some watching on TV, but I feel like this is a lot of money to spend for something that very few people are going to use, and the truly curious can come down here and sit with Josh and see that anytime. It just feels like another gimmick, and if we get 2 or 3 more sales pitches, I just haven't been sold on this idea yet, but everyone's leaning toward all these technological solutions for problems that aren't really big problems, right? So,
Well, they're not problems. It's a matter of communicating and being transparent with your citizens. It's not a problem.
Yeah, but they
I mean-
can find the budget online.
Yeah, the only difference is they can't find individual expenditures unless they do the open records request, or if they come in, as Councilor Barthelow's saying, they sit down and say, hey, what's happening here? So you do have two mechanisms. One, if you don't want to talk to anybody, you do the open records request. Two, you call and say, hey, I'm coming in, let's look at it, like what we would do if we're looking at a specific topic. So the ClearGov and the OpenGov modules just allow someone to sit somewhere and review government spending readily available. It's,
I'm kind of with Dawn on this one. I just don't think people do that.
I think they've got a great name, but I don't think they have a great product necessarily.
Or if we do it for a whole lot less.
I'm with
And what
Don.
was the cost of ClearGov?
ClearGov starts their $1,800 setup fee and then $5,560 annually. So for their annual fee, they're a third, and then their setup fee is, can't even do a 1/20th or 1/15th or something, so. But they're totally different modules, is the point.
And we really don't know whether it would get used or not. I mean, we've never had this capability.
It's kind of a lot of money to spend to find out, right?
Well, it depends on who we go with.
Well, either one of them is fairly expensive.
The reason we presented the OpenGov is since they made the presentation, the mayor and I have been in contact with them for, it seems like forever. But they made the presentation, they came out, they followed back up with us. So I told them we would put this as a white page, so it would be specifically reviewed by council. But then for our due diligence, we'd look at other companies just to say, if it's something the council says, that's why I said it's twofold.
Yeah.
Do you want to do it? Second, we'll bring it back and review a contract with you.
Why such a big difference in price?
I would say, Mayor, I'd say the difference is the level of interactive bells and whistles that OpenGov provides. They're going to be the Cadillac. ClearGov and a couple of these others are more of the, I'm not even going to pick a car.
Volkswagen.
It's not the Cadillac.
Beetle.
Do you
Maybe.
feel like we need this?
I feel that there are citizens in the community that want to see a transparency module.
How many? Any idea? Does Star have an idea?
Hang on. I'll take a
There's two
poll.
of you.
There's
I
five.
know the other one.
Okay. There's your.
The other one.
I mean, Representative, I think you're right on most items is that, the last budget workshop, we had 4. One before, we had 5. I mean, systematically, but we get the comments, at least every other week about someone saying, hey, why don't we do this? The state of Texas has pushed.
And do you think this will solve those phone calls?
I do not think it'll solve
No,
phone calls.
no, it's going to generate phone
Who's gonna
calls.
look it up?
It will.
They're gonna call
Once you
first.
put the online check system there, it'll generate some more traffic. But I don't necessarily say that more traffic's bad. I like the more traffic. I would like to have the other side as well,
Well, let me,
just to have people come in here. But I think if people aren't interested in this, the establishment of $25 million budget, then it maybe less discredits some of their concerns on the other sides.
How comfortable are you if somebody calls you and you referring them to the site first?
Well, I wouldn't refer them to the site first, because again, I talk all day long, so I'm going to talk to somebody. But I think that's a difference too. If I talk to you over and over again, then I'm finally going to say after the 19th visit, hey, why don't you just look online and look at it? Which we still say that with some of the reports, and you've heard me make comments in our council meeting about, that's a simple one. That's on the monthly report. You don't have to ask the council if they'll respond by next council meeting. So
well, one of the things that we approved on the last budget session we had was that city widget and mobile app. Why couldn't we put some reference to our financials on that and see how that works versus OpenGov?
we will. So we will continue to push information, but we're not going to push the level that these guys push. Both of these are going to take 5 years worth of budgets, and they're going to pull the information out. They're going to extrapolate, and they're going to put it into modules that give you specific expenditures per task item. Whereas our we're going to put,
It's interactive Excel.
we're going to put audits, we're going to put annual budgets, we're going to put budget message, we're going to put monthly reports, we're going to put any of those things we're going to put on there. We're going to put project budget, CIP. We're not going to drill down, and that's what this is. It's a drill down.
This is spending money to solve a problem that's not really a problem yet.
Yeah,
By definition of a real problem, I mean, we define that differently, I'm certain.
I think if you have, I think those people, you make a note of who those people are, you know, we make a list. If
She's
there's
right
20
there. She just said it's.
If there's 25 of them that's on that list, I'll go visit each one of them.
Okay.
Sit down with them.
Please call her.
You know, I'll show up at your house with the financials and say, here, let's analyze
I think
this.
for the last 2 or 3 items, we haven't listened to anyone from the crowd, right?
Yeah, I think so.
I took the mic off one time, but I didn't need it.
Which ones have I not asked feedback on?
No, they don't have it.
I don't think we talked about this.
Oh, the
sign,
arts, I missed
Wayfinder
it.
signs.
Yeah, I asked them about the signs.
I have the mic ready when you're ready, Mayor.
Okay.
Do
I
you have
definitely asked
comment?
about the signs, but
Do you have comment? We're more than happy to listen to anything you want to say.
No, I think that the signage is a lot of money for something that I get on my GPS.
Now, there's a lot of us don't use a GPS.
And I'd rather take the money that you're gonna spend on the artwork and fill some holes in the roads.
Um,
That's all I have to say.
Art in public places?
I'm a needs over want kind of person myself. Personally, in my personal life, I don't spend things I want until I take care of things I need, so.
again, that's
And I
why
think I've said in a memo to you before, or an email, it's easy to spend other people's money and it shouldn't be, so there's that.
well, and that's also why we bring up the funding source, because these hotel occupancy tax, you can't use on anything but certain things. So if I can use that and bring in art and signs and not touch my general fund budget, then that's what I'm gonna do, because otherwise that hotel occupancy fund budget just sits there.
Yeah.
So,
Find a way.
I think we have a lot of very creative people in the community that would probably donate art, maybe a scholarship fund, or maybe reduce costs on the budget. It's an idea.
I like it.
I like art.
Government doesn't have to do it all, right?
Absolutely.
We currently clean the sides of the street with volunteers, so.
again, I can't use hotel occupancy funds to mow the grass.
Right, right.
I can only use them on certain things. So if I can use it to art, you know, even if it's donated, I've got 10,000 here and I've got donated art and now I've got all kinds of art, so.
Currently, what is sitting in the hotel fund, currently, what's the balance there?
Estimated 450,000. Estimated.
A use will come up, I feel certain.
What'd you say?
I feel certain a use will come up. We will have a need.
All right.
It's our convention center down the road.
Mayor, I've got, looks like 2 votes on a no on this one.
On,
Open
Yeah.
Gov, clear, okay, that's done, so. Okay, we're right on schedule. I know that kind of amazes you, but the next page, page 33 is utility rates. The bad news is we're having a call scheduled for Monday to hopefully have some additional numbers to be able to present very soon to council.
and that's gonna be on the cost of service?
That's a cost of service
And then we
study.
still gotta do the impact study or?
Yeah, that'll be completely separate. Impact will not happen before this budget. So the cost of service
Is the only
we'll
thing.
have for you. So that'll be another large ticket item to discuss. That'll take us, more time.
Okay.
I do have the rate schedule in there for you. That's on page 34, just so you're starting to look at it. Page 35, Waste Connections, as they do every year, they sent us a cost increase for the following year. They requested a 0.8% increase. We recommended that the city eat that rate increase and not pass that on to our customers at this point. I showed you the numbers on there, that increase would be an estimated $5,315. So I think we can handle that within our current revenues and expenditures of the solid waste collection.
Gotcha.
What happens when we do have to raise rates? Do we offset what we've eaten already on top of that, or?
That's the problem with not doing an annual increase, is that if you get to that point, but what we've done is we've created a fund and a rate schedule that provides for annual increases so that you're not increasing every year. So that, at the last review of those rates, the revenues cover the expenses. So this could be, I don't think last year we did an increase on the trash. So if you remember, we had a recycling increase last year. We didn't do that for 2 years now. So if potentially next year the CPI increases, it could be a 3-year. But still, I don't think it's going to be significant numbers that really negatively impact our customers, our service. Last page, Mayor.
So.
Go ahead.
I wanna ask a question on that. If we leave our rates at the same, they're not necessarily doubling down on what their increase is over. So like if they come back next year and say they want to increase it, they're not really going.
Well, so right now, if we're paying $749,000 for the year, then next year we're going to theoretically, with no new users, pay $754,000. So then if they do another 1%, 2%, then it'll be the 1% on top of
We would
that
be presenting 749 versus whatever their new rate is
for next year.
for next year.
We'd be presenting 753 plus the new rate.
That's only if we agree to this.
Well, we don't have an ability not to agree to their increase. We only have the ability not to pass that along to our users.
Okay.
That's what I didn't clarify that.
What would be the impact of the growth as it is here?
For next year, for the new houses, what's the monthly solid waste number? Just, so 21 times 300 houses per month times 12?
Okay.
Yes.
So
So we might offset.
Systematically, I think we'll be good for at least this one more period. If it would have come out at 3%, potentially even a 4%, that would have been a greater number. I think we would spend more time.
how do we get something in the contract that says trash will not be, or whatever will be left sitting on the side of the road for 1 to 10 days,
It is in the contract.
but it still happens every week?
You mean cans?
Everything.
I
mean-
You talking about trash pickup, basically? Or
They
what are you
miss
talking about?
people every once in a while.
Well, we miss people, and then they have vehicles that are down, or they have drivers that are out, and they have more. That's the part for that. This is totally separate, but that's for the transfer station, because now with the growth, and they've had to add a new truck this year, and remember, we talked about the weight that their trucks can only carry, so I don't know, are we talking about trash outside of a can?
Yes, so supposedly they can take up to a cubic yard, which is the size of a queen-size mattress. But somebody will put a queen-size mattress out there and it'll sit there for weeks because they never pick it up.
Yeah, contractually, they only pick up the cans.
Plus 3 bags.
Plus 3 bags.
I'm not sure if when we looked at it last year, if that actually includes that in the contract.
There's the bags, but the bulk items are on if they have to import them, because otherwise they're having to dump them back. There are some items that they can't take, and some of those mattresses have any kind of bodily fluids on them.
Which is every mattress ever invented.
Then, any kind of chemicals, they're not allowed to take those to the landfill. So all they can do is leave them there. And
Where
the
is-
homeowner really needs to take those back to their property after trash day, not leave them out there for 10 days. It's not the trash people, it's the owners.
Yeah, but
Responsibility.
And that's where we're getting those
we don't
complaints.
even know who put them out there in the first place because they dump them in front of somebody else's house. But
Where is the landfill in Lago?
Back in Austin.
Out by the airport.
By the airport?
Yeah, they have to go all the way back. That's why I say again, that transfer station would allow them an opportunity to really go back.
Leave them.
Didn't I see in the budget that currently revenue for trash pickup exceeds the cost to the city in providing it by about 100,000? And wasn't there wording to that effect that that excess is used to pay for community events such as you had over in Coyote Trail for special events besides the heavy trash off day?
Mayor, that's correct. So the revenue is at 850 projected, 749 expenditures, and then paying for the dumpsters that we have, that would all come into that area. And then if there's any other special events, the Coyote, not included because that was grant funded, but if we do other events, yes.
So like,
Yeah, the trash offs, you're right. You did say that
the
too.
trash
Does it
offs,
cost that much? I mean, does each trash
They don't cost 50,000, but they can definitely cost 20, 25, 30,000. And now we're seeing more people use the trash off collection. And so the more containers we have, it literally costs a ton.
And all the containers that were brought in because of the flood debris, was that?
Yeah, and that's another one that's absorbed into that cost. And when I mentioned earlier, the FEMA reimbursement, you don't get reimbursed for all these things, unfortunately. So you pay it out of this fund. It's a good fund. It's a healthy fund. That's why I say again, that as long as we're monitoring those expenditures, then we're good at the rate right now without doing another increase, and we didn't do the one last year.
And that goes in with the, what page is that on over here? The way the city's been operating is building up these funds. What page was that on? There's all their funds listed in the fund balance sheet.
There's one fund on page 16, Mayor,
Is that what it was, 16?
but that's not going to show the solid waste. He was looking for a
Oh, we have something.
fund balance page.
Where's it at? No, it's not solid waste. It lists everything.
Is that page 16?
No. All right, I don't know. I'll have to find it. But basically, you know how we have a reserve budget and different funds, a reserve, and that's for things like this. So when we have a flood and we need money, we have it on hand in those accounts so that we can take care of an emergency right there.
Page 17 mentions solid waste, but I don't know if that's what you.
Yeah, that's not what I was looking for.
Mayor, I've exceeded my time limit, but I was going to ask if I could just touch page 36 really quickly.
Yep.
You're good with that? So 36 doesn't have a dollar to it. It's a general comment about building improvements. I've used an example of air conditioning units being a major issue in multiple facilities. What I'm asking of the council is to, instead of just earmarking a dollar for these items, because they could be smaller or larger, smaller items will absorb within a building maintenance or even a CIP if it's a larger item. These are items that may need to be brought back during a year if, for example, 2 AC units go out for this building or for the library. We would bring back funding requests back to council if we have that.
Gotcha.
Water leak that's not controlled. If James were to fall through the roof right now while he's working on the AC, we'd probably have to repair that. That could be greater. Those items you just like to bring back. You're not going to see a special earmarking for projected projects other than general maintenance and repair in your building and maintenance budget. So it's no dollar tied to it. It'll just be a as needed.
But it'll always be there because of the situation of the building.
It'll always be there. All buildings.
What about your computer speed?
Well, we've gone through updating that now.
Okay.
And inside your IT budget, you've got a few updates. I forget the size that Dave just updated City Hall. It's big. And so it's faster and better. And so some of the computers are being updated as well.
Okay.
So
It's in the works?
we've got improvements built into the budgets that hit those.
Got it.
Okay, that's all those white pages, Mayor. I know once again, you didn't get to look at anything else, but
Okay, now we've got more things.
Okay.
So part of this is for citizens to look at too. Is this going to be out somewhere for?
the other one, that one is, the flip side of the town center, I'm going to make it look better before we tell people publicly that that's what we're looking for.
Okay.
I know the trees are nice, but that one,
This is just the library.
that's just the library. That's the current layout and future option.
Okay.
So that one will be published, Mayor. The other one's going to take a little bit of work.
One question. From our first meeting and the things we added to the budget, it was an incremental $183,000, basically, from what's in this book to what's here. So is there a total budget amount that we're shooting to have our budget at? Like, you know, we went from 26,547 to now we're at 26,731. So now when she adds these in here, will be at 26, maybe 8 something.
So what we're looking at is, on all the funds, when we add these in, we'll swing to a fund balance appropriation to fund the budget. So on the utility side of things, right now, you already have a deficit. You have expenditures at this level and more expenditures and revenues. So we're funding the fund for the year, utility fund, with approximately $120,000 of fund balance. Unless we do a rate change or other things, we conserve, cut, all those things. Same thing on the general fund. So not at this point.
Yeah, but we don't have a total budget number in mind on what we want to be at.
I can tell you on general, but not total, but I can
Yeah.
tell you specifically, general fund, if the revenues are projected at 8.200965, I'd like expenditures to be 8.200964. That's general fund. Utility fund, I'd like to go the opposite way, so we make $1 as well, so.
Because I mean, if we're adding all these different things into the budget, and then we need to cut back on something, and instead of having $75,000 for signs, we cut it back to 50, you know, I mean, that's still in the works, but I need to know what our end number.
And on that, if we're able to schedule at the council meeting tonight, schedule next Thursday for another workshop, or Tuesday, Wednesday, whatever the day is, then we'll put these numbers in
Okay.
and then bring you a new list of the things and the dollars, and you can look at those specifically.
Okay.
That's where we're building it.
That's fine.
Week by week,
That's fine.
so then you can look at those numbers.
Wednesday's the chamber luncheon, that might be okay.
We could do it during the chamber luncheon.
After-
Yeah, was Roger Williams given in attendance?
Mayor, I'd like to talk at some point about a couple of new revenue sources. Don't know if we have time today, but,
Well, we are already into our executive session time
yeah.
by,
When would we meet again next Thursday?
Mayor, I'm good any day that schedule permits for everybody. Next week, we can meet Thursday, Wednesday,
so
Tuesday.
we'll set that up in our regular meeting when we get to the section.
And I'd like to have the
future.
longer session, so.
Okay,
The good news is you only have a couple items in executive, but
got it.
with you.
I got a big one. All right, I will call the special call meeting adjourned at 5:37 PM. We'll meet back, we're gonna 5:45 back in here to go into executive session.
5:45?
That way everybody can refresh their coffee and go to the restroom.
You have some Pepsi, Mountain Dew, and Pepsi One or whatever it is in the refrigerator in there.
Saw all that.